Acadia After Dark is a horror podcast, and as such, may not be appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Good evening, hikers, and welcome back to the Acadia After Dark Podcast. I am the Reverend Redbeard, very happy to be with you for our 30th episode. Thanks so much for sticking around this far. Wanted to celebrate the occasion by doing something a little different than usual. And I figured one way of celebrating this would be to get some of your stories. So I reached out on Reddit, and there was quite a few responses. And I am going to react to those because I have not actually checked them out to see what people said, but I saw quite a few. So I just grabbed the ones that were at the top of the list, and we're going to go through, see how many we can do in about an hour or so. Before we do that, though, as always, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want more of the show, you can head on over to acadiaafterdark.com. We'll have some new merch coming pretty soon here. We have a new blog update today because we just dropped a brand new episode of Campfire Stories yesterday. It was a super fun episode to do, talking about a local UFO encounter. And we're going to have plenty more of those to come. We're going to keep on with the every other week schedule for that. So it'd be off week, do Fearsome 5. And then the every other Saturday, we'll do Campfire Stories. And we're keeping up with the 2-week bi weekly uploads for the podcast for now. Because summer, like I said, kind of a slow time of year. Enjoying the time outdoors and getting stuff done. And we'll crank up the schedule again when we get the spooky season, which will be here before we know it, because, man, it's almost August already. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into some stories. Thank y'all for listening. Be back in a few. User Bearnoid said, I've seen a few UFOs in Maine. I used to work the late night factory shifts and seen a couple there. Once when I was a kid. Best one was around 2 a.m. I was watching a star for some reason. I had a feeling about that. I needed to keep an eye on it. All of a sudden, after 5 minutes of it being stationary, it started to move slowly. Then it got like 3 or 4 times brighter and shot off across the sky super fast and disappeared. Yeah, that's definitely an odd one. I've kind of seen something similar before, but I was unsure if it was just a satellite or if it was like an actual something, you know. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Illustrious Zach said, I've had two very similar. Thought I saw a light in the corner of my eye, so I looked up and noticed what I thought was a satellite. I was thinking it seemed low for some reason. Watched it for a minute slowly move across the sky, and then it just took off. Yeah, that's not typical of a satellite, I'd say. Haven't seen that myself. I would have to assume it's something odd. I mean, I lived near an airport for like 10 years and I saw quite a bit of, what it looks like to see planes, helicopters, etc. uh at night and all manner of different aircraft. We even had some military aircraft come in there and you can kind of get a feel for it, especially at night. And yeah, we have a lot of shit in the sky now, unfortunately, with satellites like Starlink and all that stuff. So it's kind of hard to judge, honestly. The piece of land we built our house on, Evening Worry said. Piece of land we built our house on. The prior owners, married couple, bought it to build on. And shortly after, there was a report of crop circles in the field to the side of my land. One of the two of them, can't remember which at the moment, got very freaked out by this and put the squash to the building plan. About 15 plus years later, they realized they really still weren't going to build here, and we bought it. I think it was totally badass that there may have been crop circles. So that was totally a bonus for us. That's interesting. I have not actually heard of crop circles in Maine. That's pretty cool. I don't know if I've ever seen authentic, real crop circle reports because usually they get debunked. And I don't know. I guess we have like plenty of agriculture up here, corn and stuff like that people grow, so it's possible. But I haven't seen any authentic ones, so maybe we can find some articles of that at some point. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Not the sharpest tool in the shed, eh? I guess. um, so very late one night, driving dirt roads between Waldoboro and Union, my friend and I saw an animal crossing in front of the truck. It was as big as a Great Dane, jet black, giant round head. Looked like a cat, but moved like a dog. I've never seen anything like it to this day. Yeah, I've seen something like that before, actually. I have seen two cougars in my life up here in Maine, and I've seen a dog like thing, like a big black dog. I don't know what it was because we don't have wolves, especially not like black ones, and it looked more like a dog to me. Um, but yeah, that's terrifying. Would hate to see something like that, honestly. And good Flama, or yeah, I can't even pronounce that. Says, "Hey, cool. Thanks for the new paranoia." Yeah, welcome to Maine, right? Stressed Husband 7302 says, about 30 years ago, my wait, that's a wild username. That's fucking weird, dude. Anyways, about 30 years ago, my brother, who was an avid hunter, never seen the guy afraid of anything, literally nothing, came running into the house one morning about 4 a.m., saying he was hunting on Little Deer Isle and said him and his friend had seen a glowing red ball about 10 to 15 feet across it and followed them for or through the woods. That's the whole story, but I believe for the simple fact he looked terrified and had never really been known to lie or tell tales. Yeah, people that spend their time out in the woods, and you gotta kind of take that a little more seriously. I understand it when it's people that aren't used to seeing stuff out here or like go hunting or spend time in the woods. But then when it's somebody that's experienced like that, yeah, smoked a bit too much too early. That's a legitimate possibility, but I would not blow it off as that right away. Uh Rural state with low light pollution and high substance consumption, people are bound to see things. Yeah, for real. That said, I grew up in a 200 plus year old house with a cemetery in the backyard. I saw things there that I still have no explanation for. Right? And that's a funny thing too, because it's like everybody kind of has their thing that okay, they may not believe in UFOs or they may not believe in ghosts or they may not believe in like, cryptids or whatever. But they're going to have something weird that they do believe in. And I think almost everybody can identify something superstitious or otherwise. And yeah, I mean, a haunted house, you grow up in a friggin' 200 plus year old house with a cemetery in the backyard. I'd be surprised if you didn't have some weird experiences, honestly. Yep, I don't believe in ghosts, but I've seen two. Yeah, that's that's living in Maine right there, right? Dead is better. Local design 1313. Yeah, right. One sunny afternoon, my ex-husband and I were driving on Beach Street in Saco, past the cemetery. I saw a very tall black woman standing at a grave in the middle of the cemetery. What caught my attention was that she was wearing a long black gown and robe, and she was wearing a tall black pharaoh's hat. Wow, that's wild. That's the best way I can describe it. I was mesmerized and stared at her for what seemed like a long time, but was probably only 5 seconds or so. I assumed that she was wearing a type of mourning outfit. I turned to my ex for a split second. When I looked, she was gone. That was 30 plus years ago, and I still think about it every once in a while. Yeah, that's a weird one. I mean, we have several haunted cemeteries around different parts of Maine. I'm wondering if she means like literally a black woman, like a shadow person, or if she's talking like a black woman, like the ethnicity. I'm kind of curious for more elaboration on that one. Um, okay, Olive 9438 says no, but I feel it is safe to say that spinning a yarn is a storied Maine tradition. I listened close and learned some of my best storytelling tricks from old timers who are particularly delighted in telling elaborate fabrications to children. So to see just when the kids start to doubt the story. Of course, a clever little critter will nod with eyes and ask, then what happened? To see how far they can take it. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's definitely that. That's part of folk tales, you know. It's like most people wouldn't consider Paul Bunyan to be like a legitimate, authentic account of a real living thing, and yet it's a story that's been like perpetuated for 140 years, something like that now. Well, probably well more than that because it was late 1800s. But nonetheless, is like, we do spin yarns. Yeah, I mean, storytelling is that, but a lot of storytelling has at least some of it based in fact. So it's worth at least listening to see what the truth behind it may be. I don't know. It's interesting though. Good point. Um, Plastic Molasses says that's how Stephen King got started. Yeah, straight up. He pretty much just took like different like local folklore and stuff like that and just adapted it into his own stories. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just he kind of like uh, not to get too far down the Stephen King rabbit hole. If you want to hear, my thoughts on Stephen King, let me know, and I'll give them to you sometime in a separate episode. But he, a lot of people that I've talked to, he's kind of trampled on certain cultural perspectives and rituals, and he uh he doesn't exactly have a lot of sensitivity, even though he's like, liberal and stuff like that. He tends to get a lot of stuff wrong and very rarely apologizes for it when he does. So yeah, it's one thing to take creative liberties. It's another thing when you're just straight up like taking somebody's like actual culture and just like, making something out of it that is not. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, Stephen King got started that way too. You got to do something while sitting at camp or waiting for fish to bite. People bullshit with each other. Funny thing is, I have solo camped all over for decades, and only stuff like drunk assholes have bothered me. Yeah, for real. Even the animals don't bother with me. You see them, but they just ignore you. Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of times you can have that. You know, just lucky, right? And some people just don't seem to have any issues. Other people, it's like every time they go out in the woods. But for real, basically, the worst things I've ever encountered in the woods have been other people. So for real, it's just, yeah, that's how it is. Slice of pie, complete horse shit. Only some click chaser from YouTube would even post nonsense like this. Yep, that's right. Okay, Homestar 76. Just go to the Bangor Mall and I guarantee you will feel creeped out by its liminal spaces. Yeah. So the mall really has kind of taken on like a very creepy vibe now, especially where like half of it is basically empty. There's hardly ever any people there. And a lot of it just like ceased to function kind of. It's very weird. I don't know. We always hope that they're gonna like revamp stuff there, and they were talking last year about doing something where they would have basically like uh the mall like converted into like homeless housing and stuff like that, which would be kind of cool, but they just straight up did not move forward with it, and nobody could come to agreement on it. And the person that owns it like owes just shit tons of money to the town for various things and just keeps making it worse for themselves, I guess, from what I understand in the papers. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how that plans out. It's pretty creepy though, and it's such a huge mall for like Bangor. It's, I don't know. big waste of space. Liminal space is that's an odd way to describe where the meth heads hang out by the dumpsters. Yeah, right. When the radar went out on all the boats in Damariscotta area around 1982, I think it was. I was only 4, but remember it well because we had a friend who traded lobster to us for firewood, and he said all the boats saw it in the sky above them. Old man in the sky, my ass. Huh, beam reached 78. I'm going to have to look into that. I have not ever heard of that. That could be an interesting thing. Definitely worth checking out. Sounds creepy. UFO or EMP or magnetic thing. I don't know. It's weird. Important Flounder 114 says my grandfather lived a few miles away from Richard Uffelman's compound. Prior to his rampage, we would see a bunch of wacky s going on the property, drilling the kids around like soldiers, walking around with a rifle while wearing nothing but a banana hammock, etc. I can clearly remember driving by and my dad remarked, "That fella is going to snap one of these days." Well, yeah, yeah, some foreshadowing there, right? Your comment just made me read the 1991 New York Times article about everything leading up to the slayings. I love that area of Maine, but I had never heard that story. Madness. Yeah, I'll have to do a video on that sometime. It's a crazy, crazy case. I don't think a lot of people have heard it. So, uh, it's a wacky story. I know a few people that had dealings with Richard personally. Dude was one of a kind. Yeah, yeah, nuts. It's that cult stuff. Uh, Day Temporary 2502 says, I lived in a house for a few years that many people said was haunted. I never believed in that stuff, so didn't think twice about it. When strange things started happening, I'll list them here. During an outdoor birthday party, a guest went inside to get coffee. She came out with a pale face and said someone asked her how's the coffee. Clear as day, she said, but no one was there. My family and I were sitting in the living room when the pantry door flew open and a mug went across the room, shattering against the wall. Another time, my dad's sister and I were in the living room and heard a deep, unnerving scream/yell. We lived in a town, so and maybe someone outside. I don't know. I was at a house alone one day, waiting to go to basketball practice. I heard footsteps upstairs, so I stupidly went to investigate. Once I got up there, I had a feeling of dread and felt really cold. I ran into the bathroom and locked the door. The footsteps resumed and walked down the hallway to the door. I had never been so scared. I waited a few minutes and nothing happened. I ran downstairs and out of the front door. I waited outside the rest of the time. We ended up moving out soon after for unrelated reasons, but I was glad to be out of that house. I'm still not sure if I believe in ghosts, but I will never forget what I experienced in that house. Yeah, another one of those just random ass haunted buildings all throughout the state. I say it before, it's pretty much everywhere here is haunted, so all of that checks out. Pretty interesting the the coffee one though. It's like I mean, and none of them feel threatening. I guess you would be creeped out, yeah, if you were not used to it. But it seems the thing had a real obsession with the coffee in kitchen because the coffee first, then throwing a mug. Um, it just seems like it really wasn't doing anything bad. It was just like existing there. So that's kind of cool. I don't know about going upstairs by yourself in a house alone when you hear footsteps, though. That just seems like a bad idea in general. I'm glad that you didn't end up making it worse for yourself just by that alone. It's going to be one of those things where, like, you hear the steps upstairs. Yeah, you ran outside, but you probably should have just called 911 immediately and bunkered down somewhere safe, like lock yourself in a bathroom or something. Because home intruders, it happens. And yeah, again, people are usually the worst thing you can come across out here. So if a house has a knob and tube wiring and horsehair plaster, it's got some memories. Just trying to share them with you. Yeah, that's funny. I had a heavy dresser move about 2 feet out from the wall and all the drawers pulled out one night while my wife and I were sleeping. It was my father in law's old dresser in his old room. He had died about 2.5 years before. Wow, that's wild. Takes some strength to move something like that fast and have that in the middle of the night. That scares the shit. Yeah, that scares out of you. My husband and I stayed at a bed and breakfast. Sorry, Turbulent Big 1228 said, my husband and I stayed at a bed and breakfast on the Central Coast a few years back. The home once belonged to a woman who was married to a wealthy man, and she would hold lavish parties at the house. Some of her belongings were still in the attic space upstairs. Many of the employees would see her ghost from time to time. Our room was on the top floor, and as we ascended the stairs, we could see the attic space was open, and her old dresses, hats, and jewelry were semi on display. Our room was the only one on the top floor. I dreamt that night of her, that she floated into the room, handed me a rose, and left. At the same time I was dreaming of her, my husband got up to pee, and when he came back from the bathroom, he saw there was floating next to the door. She wasn't staring at us, just looking out in the distance of the window that was adjacent to her. My husband crawled back in bed and hugged me tight, tight enough to wake me up from my dream I was having of her. When we woke in the morning, I told him I dreamt of her, and he said, yeah, well, I saw her. We couldn't believe that as I was dreaming of her. She was in the room, and my husband was seeing her. Totally wild. Yeah, we have a ton of haunted inns down on the island and stuff, and Mid Coast has like a bunch of little, like, tourist trappy towns that have these nice little bed and breakfasts, and a lot of them are pretty haunted. Searsport has a lot. Uh, Sullivan has several. No surprise, no surprise. Um, when backing up with Link says, when I'm at the lake, my office desk faces a window. I was on a call late, 1 a.m. ish, with no lights but my laptop, and a person walked by in the hall. Okay, so hold on. I can't, like, I'm all about this stuff, but even I can't sit there with, like, just the lights of a laptop on and the middle of the night. I don't care what reason you have. No way. It's just that's already creepy enough. Person walking by in the hall though. Okay. A window isn't a perfect mirror, so I only got a blurry glimpse, but also clearly heard the walking and someone moving down the hall. I thought it was my wife going to the bathroom. A few minutes later, I heard and felt breathing right next to my ear and saw a blurry reflection of a face in the window. It was inches from my ear. I thought my wife was messing with me, so I spun really fast and yelled, knock it off. And there was nobody there. My wife yelled from the bedroom to see what was the matter. Weeks later, I was talking with a neighbor, and he'd asked if I'd experienced the ghost yet. The previous owner told him someone walked up and down the hall all night. Yeah, that's terrifying. Terrifying. That I mean, I didn't realize that there was somebody else home at the same time. Even then, though, that yeah, nope, no, thank you. I would have would have probably not been sitting there in the first place with just your laptop on. It's a creepy enough thing, but then to know that you were able to see a reflection in the fucking window, like that's terrifying. Reminds me of that scene at the end of Insidious, honestly, where he sees it in the mirror. That would just scare the crap out of any normal person, I think. So, yeah, good story. Mike McD, 1972, says, live in New Jersey, but my wife's family has a lake house in Maine. Had my only ghost experience in her brother's house across the dirt road from our house. Long story, but was there with my 2-year-old from previous marriage. We were engaged, spending the night at her brother's vacant house for a little privacy from the rest of her family. While my fiance was asleep in the master bedroom, my son was trying to sleep in the adjoining bedroom. 2 separate times, I heard a woman's voice talking to my son in the other room. The second time I went in and heard my son say to the voice, go away, leave me alone. I spent the night on my son's toddler bed, wide awake. He slept. I never said a word to anyone about what happened. When we got back home from vacation, my mom stopped by to see my son. I hadn't said a word to anyone. And first thing he says to his grandma is, "Grandma, there was a ghost in my room." I found out from my fiance that a young mom who had a toddler had died in that exact room 10 years earlier. Wow. That's a crazy story. Terrifying when it involves children, especially that young. But yeah, wow. It seems like they would have told you that beforehand, but uh, yeah, some people, oops, I forgot. Like, yeah, happens all the time, I guess. That's, yeah, I probably would have had the same reaction, to be honest, though, because have the kid do that, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not letting this kid be alone now anymore. And then leave it to children. Like, the first thing they're going to do is, oh, yeah, grandma, there was a ghost. Like, I remember when my kid was like 4, telling somebody and like literally just with a straight face being like, yeah, there's a zombie that lives in my closet in the middle of the night. And then I had to explain to the school that, like, no, the child doesn't actually know what a zombie is, and they're just saying this. I have no idea where she got that from. She just started saying it. So it's kids are weird, Joe. Why screen says holy shit. My first job was the old house in Raymond on Route 85, and it was 100% haunted. Footsteps in the attic and basement, chairs moving in storage above you, doors opening randomly. Yep, another one of those. Plenty of them appear. Ooh, Lady Cat 1969 says Fort Williams down in Cape Elizabeth. Heard a lot about that place. Uh, it was a hot, muggy day. The sky was a peachy copper color well before sunset, and I hate thunderstorms. Mom had gone down to wander around Portland Headlight along with the only keys to the car. Not wanting to be out in the parking lot when the storm hit, my brother and I went into one of the underground sections to wait for her. Bro chose to explore a little. I stayed at the front to keep an eye on things, and we are the only ones in there, and a good 20 feet apart, when I feel a hand come down on the back of my neck. Not a light brush. I had waist length hair back then, and I could feel it compressing under the pressure. Took off running right into the teeth of the storm, and it is the only time in my life I ever beat my brother in a race, even with a head start. Luckily, Mom got to the car a few seconds after us, and we got in the car before the deluge. Later, I asked my brother why he ran too. He said if there was something in there that could get you to run out into a storm, I was sticking around to see it. Oh, wasn't sticking around to see it. Okay, yeah, couldn't argue that. Yeah, straight up. And I'm kind of curious. I'd have to see, like, because I know I haven't been to Fort Williams before. I've seen pictures of the place, but I would have to assume that if you're talking about it, it's probably like probably where in Cape Elizabeth there was like several haunted like tunnels and stuff down there, and I can't imagine what would be down in those places. It's like Fort Knox. There's so many like, ghosts just baked into the stone and stuff like that. There's probably a ton of hauntings in that area. So that's pretty cool that you got to experience something. Hopefully, I mean, one of these days, I'd be willing to go there myself and check it out because it's another of those places I've heard a lot of. Uh, yeah, wild stuff, man. Wild. I love stories like that because it just makes you think. Either following 96 says, I live in Falmouth, and the house next to us was built in the late 1700s, and all three families who have lived there since we have lived here have told us it's haunted unprompted, and unaware of the previous owner's stories. I don't think I want to find out for myself, though. Yeah. Well, unless you can afford to move. But a house from the late 1700s, that's like, yeah, that's quite old. We don't have many around here like that nowadays. It's like, 1800s, 1900s, in Trenton, MDI. There's a lot of those, but 1700s is very, very old for Maine. So cool place to be, but yeah, don't ask too many questions unless you could afford to move because you might not want the answers. Art Decorative says we've got a house, go to ghost in our house that likes to hide things. not particularly menacing, but is a little annoying now and then. I think most houses in Maine have a spirit like that that just does shit, moves it. I don't know if it's a ghost or if it's just something else, but yeah, I know we have several of them here that will move stuff and then put it back a little later. Incredibly inconvenient and very frustrating at times, but relatively harmless. Dumples82 says I was walking home from a friend's house through a shortcut in the woods at 15, 1997. It was dead silent. The hair on my arm stood up, but it was warm, late July. Looked down and to my left, and 10 feet away, about 18 inches off of the ground, were a set of ruby red eye shine, about 2 inches in diameter and 3 inches apart. It was a crescent moon, so enough light to see the trail, but not much on off to the side. The eyes were pretty big for something that glow low to the ground. I took off and it did not move. Maybe it was the adrenaline, but I don't remember any of the normal ambient somber noise. Weird shit. Yeah, I can't think of anything that has red eye shine, so that's alone is usually a bad thing to see. But there's also a lot of legends here, not only of old red eyes, which is one of them, but there's also like several other like cryptids that supposedly have red eye shine that are like known by like different cultures and stuff like that up here. So yeah, either way, probably a good idea. You just didn't mess around and just got the heck out of there because there's like nothing good waiting for you if it able to sneak up on somebody and looks like that. Weird that it was 1997. Maine was a very different place. 1997, my road was just the road that I live on was getting paved for the first time, probably. It was that sort of a situation. So, some places, depending on where you were, it didn't give a location for this. It'd be kind of cool to know, but it is really a cool story either way. The April 17, my upbringing was a horror show, just as many children brought up in Maine have probably experienced. That was not only scary, but strange given the acceptance of locals admiring abusers and shunning those that refused to stay quiet. Yeah, unfortunately, it was Maine for a very long time had like the highest rate of domestic abuse in the country, and it's something that didn't get talked about enough. And yeah, it's horrific that it's affected so many people generationally. And I like to think we're in a better place nowadays, but honestly, it's kind of hard to tell because the whole country seems to have kind of gone upended on that stuff. So I don't know. Sad that you experienced that. Boneful of fruit. And I too am a Mainer of Maine who has many Maine experience, fellow Mainers. Yes, that's about right. Yeah. Beneficial Ruin 2156. Tell us about your Maine experience. Yeah. Fact on Megathread says lots of UFO sightings end up being a plane, helicopter, or satellites. I don't think I'd be scared to see a real bona fide UFO. Hiking in the woods, like the proper deep woods, especially at night, can be super unsettling with all sorts of noises from the wind creaking and trees and such. It's also pretty cool. Yeah, for sure. Like until you come across something that really is scary, it's definitely cool until you have that experience, and then it's not much cooler anymore because you just never really look at the woods the same way after it happens once. And there's supposedly like proof that like once you've been exposed to different types of phenomena, it can make you more susceptible from seeing it in the future. And yeah, you kind of don't want that around here. Seaglass Girl '04. I think the scariest times deep in the woods are when all the forest noises stop. Yeah, I can't remember what that's called. There's actually like a term for that, and it's terrifying because you almost know that there's always something bad waiting for you. It's like the forest just kind of is holding its breath and waiting, and just gives chills. It's terrifying. Uh, Basket Case Theory says red lightning out over Kettle Cove around 10 p.m. a few summers ago. Cape Elizabeth is a mysterious place and absolutely terrifying at night. Yep. Another mention of Cape Elizabeth, as I said, definitely got to do a video on that one. And Red Lightning over Kettle Cove, that's crazy. Like I bet people probably got some pictures out there because that would have been something that definitely would have been documented. I'd have to look that up. That sounds awesome though. Livid Dot 5984 says it's the rich who don't pay their help in a timely manner. That's the spooky stuff. Yeah, yeah, for real. Down on the island, that was a big problem. Bar Harbor Babylon talks a lot about it. I've had more than one friend have a Bigfoot esque experience. Taint Master 9000. Yeah, should have read that name first. Have had more than one friend have a Bigfoot esque experience. Not like a spotting, more like a being hunted. I don't go into the woods alone, and I don't suggest anybody do that. That's solid advice. Solid advice. Not the first person I've heard feel like they were being haunted out, like hunted out there by whatever it is that's waiting. Interesting Chip 692 says, was born and raised on 40 acres of farmland and woods. Dad always said there's nothing to be afraid of in these woods at night. The only fear is fear itself. Okay, bud. Never got bothered by anything but bats in the evening catching bugs. Well, bats usually don't bother me as much as the bugs, so I say you're lucky, man. Um, Hippie Guy 24, sort of same. Spent a lot of time in the woods. Not gonna lie, the noises at night can seem creepy, only because you don't realize how much is going on in the woods at night until you're out there listening to it. Those tiny noises can sound massive, especially at night. True, true. Adventurous Belt 7466 grew up in a haunted house with many family members, including myself seeing ghosts. Also saw a figure at a cemetery a few years ago when I know I was totally alone. Yeah, another haunted cemetery. Sounds about right. Prince Volume 25. My mom worked for a I'm assuming. Okay, tax service office in Lisbon Falls from 1986 to 2000 something. She swears up and down that place was super haunted. She wouldn't even go in the office alone. That's a good enough reason to not do your taxes. I'm totally in favor of that. The old Brunswick High School, which was demolished around 15 years ago, was long rumored to be haunted. I went to the new high school, but of course, some of the teachers had been here a long time. My English teacher, in particular, had a story about staying late one night to grade work and basically running out because the door kept slamming, and he was the only one left in the building. Yeah, that sounds 100% accurate. Honestly, it was one thing I was joking about a while ago that I had said. I think most towns in Maine had like the new school and then the old school that was haunted. And that was a very common trend, especially in a lot of the smaller towns. Like Ellsworth had one for a long time. Brunswick, I have heard of, and there's several others around here. Old Town School used to be the same. Bar Harbor, yeah. So every main town, you're gonna find like the old haunted school, and then the new school that has the budget and has the funding. D's Nuts Original says, when I was a kid, I was cleaning my room and the door to the hall was open. As I was putting stuff away, I saw out of the corner of my eye a woman in a long white dress float down the hallway and make no sound. Not a long story, but one I always remember. Yeah, yeah, another haunted house. I hate women in white. They're pretty common up here. Call them dire maidens. Don't know what the causes of them sometimes are, but it certainly sounds like a residual haunting in that case. So luckily, probably nothing harmful. And I think that pretty much does it for the amount of requests and messages we got on the last Reddit post. So that was super fun. I hope that you enjoyed that. I'm really shocked by the amount of responses. I knew there were going to be a lot because Maine has a lot of stories and people tend to, have experiences up here. Very happy for the first post on that. So thank you for those that participated and sent us your messages. I look forward to hearing more. Everybody else on social medias and stuff like that, whether you be on Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, even, or just commenting on our YouTube videos. if you have had an experience or something like that, don't be afraid to reach out, send me a message, or even just email the forum on the acadiaafterdark.com. You can always, just send me a quick message and then we can discuss it more. Or if it's something you just got a one off story that you want to share, feel free to shoot it my way. I love to hear them. I've been doing more of that for the Campfire Stories stuff lately. I am going to mix those in. I don't want to just rely on user stories because, as fun as they are and listener stories and stuff like that, as fun as it is, I don't want the entire channel to revolve around that. So I'm going to definitely like pepper them in here or there, but try and keep to just spread more of the stories of the folklore and stuff of the region like we have been doing previously. So, anyways, if you have stories, like I said, go ahead and share them. I'd love to hear them. Very interested in all that stuff. We've had some really cool ones today. Some of it I definitely want to go back and look at more and see if there's any like other references to the stuff in the area. Gonna look forward to researching more on Cape Elizabeth because that was brought up several times in this episode. So yeah, anyways, thank you all for 30 episodes. I'm definitely just so happy and proud with as far as things have come so far on the channel and everything like that. The show's definitely evolved a lot over the last few months, and I think it will continue to evolve and grow and expand. And it's just been a blast to do this and write and learn more about all of these things and to talk to people, learn more about the spooky people up here in Maine that have all this cool experiences and expertise, and so many talented people up here. It's just been awesome. So again, it's been fantastic. Doing 30 episodes of the podcast. We're gonna hopefully do 30 more before we know it. Probably next time we'll do a video like this will probably be the 50 episode. I don't know what we'll do for that one, but we'll figure something out along the way. Anyways, as always, I've been the Reverend Redbeard. Thank you all so much for listening. I definitely appreciate you hanging out with me here this evening. Keep those lanterns lit, stay safe out there, and we'll talk soon.